Hello class, welcome to Mario Maker Construction 101. Before we get into our first unit, let's go over the syllabus. Over the course of however long it takes, we will go through each unit on how to build a Mario Maker level. Mario Maker 2 specifically. This 101 course is simply education on how each item or course element works when creating a Mario Maker level. As before you can even know about how to use the geometry or how to use items correctly, you need to know what the items are. It's not much different than learning real architecture. So that's what we're here to do. The first unit of this 101 course will be terrain, and I will discuss the definition more broadly of terrain when I get to it. Unit 2 will be items. Unit 3, we will go over enemies. Now this one's a big unit, so if it looks like you guys will need more time to get it, we can split this into 2 units. And then Unit 4 will be gizmos. Same thing as Unit 3, this is a big unit as well, so if it takes us splitting it into 2 because it's a lot of information to get, I will do that as well. Whatever it takes to help you guys along. If you ever have any questions, you know to find me. Alright, so before we actually get into the items, let's talk about the terrain. Basically, the terrain is what a level is made out of. You can have, whether it be items or enemies that you're going against, they have to happen on something. Without it, you're all falling through air. That's where terrain comes in. Terrain has the largest item limit. But don't have to worry about item limit. We will get to that in Mario Maker 201 if you continue your studies. So I'm going to go through all of the terrains in alphabetical order. Not only will it help you when studying, but it will help me when teaching. Because you know teachers can use all the help they can get. Alright. First up is technically what's first in alphabetical order, the question mark block. Now, in essence, this block, which is available in all game modes, and I will mention if a certain item is not available in all the game modes, so I don't have to worry about trying to guess. But basically, you can put pretty much any or most items or enemies inside a question mark block, and when you bonk your head on the question mark block, the item or enemy will appear. Now, there are a number of ways to use this creatively. One way is to use a modifier with the wing modifier. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail with modifiers. Again, that will be taught in class 201. But basically, you can use the wing modifier to make it go faster, or if it's not on a rail, to make it float in the air. But in essence, this is going to be, for most levels, the first thing you come across. And most of the time you're going to bonk your headhunt and you get an item, whether it be a mushroom or fire flower. So there we go, question mark block. Alright, let's move on. Next is the brick block. The brick block appears in every Mario Maker mode except in Super Mario World. We will get to what takes its place later. But in essence, a brick block is similar to a question mark block, but if you bonk your head on it while you're big, the brick will break. Or, if it has an item or coin in it, it will turn into an empty block, which we will get to later. In New Super Mario Bros. Wii U or Super Mario 3D World mode, if you ground pound on it, it will break it as well. Or it will turn to empty block if there's an item or coin in it. Again, these are pretty basic. Many of the creative ways that they can be used are very similar to how we'd use a question mark block in the first place. So it's really a matter of preference for anybody not in Super Mario World. Okay, we got that? Alright. Next is the bridge. What makes the bridge unique is that it's solid only at the top, but which means that you can jump from underneath and land on top of it, which can be used in many, which can and are used in many speedrun levels. These appear in all but a Super Mario 3D World, kind of. It's hard to explain, but basically, in Super Mario, this will be covered again in class 102 if you guys so continue to if you guys so choose to continue. But many items are different in 3D World, as well as there are many items are missing from 3D World and new items take its place. So if I say it's in all of the worlds, assume I mean the 4 and potentially the 5th, but not always, because most of the time you're going to be running into the main 4, which is Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario World, Super Mario Bros. 3, and New Super Mario Brothers. But all those discrepancies will be discussed in class 201. So I don't have to worry about that right now. But basically, that's what the bridge is. They are often used in speedrun levels, so you can jump from level to level without having to like go around the ground. So that's what they were used for. Next is the clear pipe. Now this one is only used in New Super Mario 3D World. And unlike regular pipes, which take you to the subworld, this one takes you and transports you through the level in the pipe. So if you enter in one area, if you enter in one end, you will travel around in the pipe until you enter the other end. Exit out the other end. Except if it's blocked off, which can be really dangerous if you go into it and it's blocked and you come back out and it's blocked and you'll end up dying. I would say there are many creative ways, but also a lot of dumb ways to use it. One of the classic ways is the classic pick a pipe level design, which either has you pick from like 10 clear pipes where 9 kill you, or you pick a pipe where it takes like 5 minutes to get to the other end. Not fun for anyone, but that doesn't mean there aren't any creative ways to use it. One way is to have an enemy, is to create a little U in the pipe and have an enemy go through it, making it hard to dodge. Or put a bridge-like item on there, and the enemies can go from one pipe to the other, forcing you to dodge them as you go up. So there are some good ways to use it, as well as some dumb ways. Make sure you understand the dumb ways, because avoiding those will be on the test. Next is the cloud block. These are similar to the bridge, but you can make them one square across. You can also modify them to have wings, but again, we're not going to worry about modifying right now. One creative way, again, would be with modifiers. You can have them go through the air and have you jump on them to avoid falling into a pit. And while we are not going to discuss too much on modifiers, it is important to understand that modifiers can and do affect items pretty greatly. So while I will not be asking too many of those on the test, I would recommend that you know them. Next is a conveyor belt. A conveyor belt is how it sounds. It has 2 different directions with 2 different speeds each. Fast, actually it's not really fast, it's normal and fast. There's also a modifier where you can make them turn on and off. And we will discuss more about this phenomenon in a future unit. But right now, we're going to only focus on the regular conveyor belt. The obvious application for this is to slow you down or speed you up. Very often in speedrun levels, it's either used to speed you up for a big jump or to slow you down so you can barely reach the goal in time. You cannot enter these from the bottom. If you jump at the bottom, you'll hit your head and fall back down. These are not like bridges. You cannot just go through them. Very often, they also aren't infinite in length. If you want to make them longer than they're allowed, you have to put multiples on them, which will add to the item limit. Again, we will discuss item limits in a future class. Next is the donut block, which appear in all of them. A donut block is basically when you stand on it, at a certain point, it will give out from underneath you. The most common way to avoid it doing that is to jump. After you jump, it resets the timer, and you can land on it again. These are interesting because, again, unlike other platforms, you can't just stand on them. You have to be doing something, and you can modify them as well. Creative ways to use them are one way is to put them on rails, which we will go through in a future unit, and travel on them, trying to jump while avoiding, so you can avoid falling down into like lava or a pit. Next is the ground block. And this is basically what it sounds like. It's your basic ground block, nothing special. You can't go from underneath it, and they can be, unlike things like the conveyor belt, they are one block each, so you have numerous ones, make them as long as the level is. I would guess like 90% plus of any and all levels are made of ground blocks, because ground blocks are also used as walls and ceilings most of the time. And while they do differ in appearance from game mode and type in the modes, or worlds in the modes like fire or castle or underwater, they all act identical. They just look different. And there's not really any uniquely creative ways. It's just kind of there to be ground, and does a good job at that. Then to differentiate from the regular ground to the sloped ground, we have slopes, which was introduced in Sumo Maker 2. General slopes are ground blocks at a 30-degree angle that players can slide down. The slide is relatively slow, but it's much easier to walk at. It's much easier to run on as you lose very little speed. To contrast that with the sharp slope, which are at 45-degree angle, it's much harder to walk on and much quicker to jump, but you slide down much faster, and you have to be careful because if you're going up, it can sometimes be hard to jump over certain enemies and downright impossible to jump over a tower of enemies. And we will discuss towering another time. But in essence, that's what the slope is. It is, your ground blocks are flat, your gentle slopes are slightly sloped, and your steep slopes are very sloped. And there are numerous ways to use the slopes creatively. One creative way is to combine slopes to throw off any and all players. Next is the empty block. Now, generally, these appear when you either activate a question mark block, either by bonking your head or ground pounding in the newer modes, or when you activate a brick that has a coin or item in it. You can also place these in the level without as is. You don't have to have a question mark block. Now, there's no real way to use these. You can use these as any like brick or question mark block. The only reason you would want these, I guess, is if you don't want them to fall down like double blocks, and you don't want them to be ground pounded on like the bricks. So that's what you can do with the empty blocks. They're really more for aesthetics, as they don't really offer anything more than either the ones we talk about or the next item, the hard block. These are a cement block that can be modified, unlike the empty block, which cannot be modified. These are basically ground blocks, but they're actual blocks, as opposed to ground tiles, which are not necessarily blocks. And now, unlike ground tiles, these can be modified and put on rails. Putting things on rails is very prominent, which we can probably make a whole class on itself, but we'll get to that when we get to that. Hard blocks are good because, again, they can be modified and they cannot be destroyed, unlike brick blocks. So make sure to write that down, because hard blocks are very commonly used, probably the most common behind ground blocks. Next are hidden blocks. These are question mark blocks that are invisible. Now, these can be very divisive because what we call dev exits, which will be talked about in an advanced class, probably 301, I believe. I have to look into that syllabus. But basically, hidden blocks are question mark blocks. They can do you can do anything and everything with it that you can with regular question mark blocks. The only difference is that they are not only are they invisible, but they can only be activated from below. You cannot ground pound them. Creative uses for this, well, with the exception of dev exits, the obvious way to use these creatively is with any other Mario game. Put them in a certain area as a reward for exploration, such as a one-up mushroom or a needed item. Again, you can remember this for the test. You do not want to use these as dev exits, as not only would that guarantee you a boo, but which we'll get to another time, but it will also make it very difficult for any players to actually complete your level. Next are ice blocks. Now, ice blocks are basically the same thing as hard blocks. The only difference is that they have ice physics. Now, what does that mean? Well, for the purposes of this class, that basically means you slide on them, as opposed to hard blocks where you just stop as soon as you stop moving. Ice blocks, you continue to slide farther as you're on them, which become very tricky if you can only land on one. And they can also be modified with hidden blocks. Now, they do not melt like a future ice block we will talk about, but they do cause you to slide. The obvious creative uses for this are the same as hard blocks. The only difference is that you use these if you want a little more of a challenge, because these can and have been a pain to use when you're on one and you're trying to go to another area. Next is a Electro. Now, these are basically spikes, spike traps, but for underwater areas. And before we get into that, I think we should discuss spike traps first. Like, the school here gave me the order of it alphabetically, and I'm realizing that I probably isn't gonna help you kids. So I'm going to go down here and talk about spike traps first. Basically, these appear in all modes. They are spike blocks where if you touch it, you either lose an item or you die if you're small. Most of the time, people use these to give you more of a challenge, like put them on roofs so you don't jump, or they put them in a column so you jump over them. There are numerous ways, and I bet that probably 50% of your deaths will come from spike traps alone. Now that we got that out of the way, and they cannot be modified, which probably is for the better. Now with that out of the way, we can tell about the Electro. In Super Mario Bros. 3, if you put a spike trap underwater, it turns into a Electro, which is basically a spike trap that looks different. It looks like a jellyfish. There's really no a difference in attributes between the Electro and the spike trap. The textbook says that there is, like, gives you an electric shock, but in essence, it's the same thing. So and I'm sure you've seen in other classes where the teacher tells you, things are a little different than what the textbook says. I know I have, especially in math. And here I'm telling you that it's really no different. Same thing with the sea urchin. Now, in Super Mario World, if you put a spike trap underwater, you get a sea urchin. Again, they are exactly the same as the spikes. They just look a little different. All three, there's no real good way to use them creatively, as you can't put them on a rail, nor can you modify them. But they are good as very simple obstacles for an otherwise easy level. Next, we have mushroom platforms. These are semi-solid platforms that are very similar to bridges. The only difference is that they have basically a vertex. They have a column in the middle. In essence, they work the same as bridges. It's just harder to stack them because of that column in the middle. In essence, all modes have these. They just look and act somewhat different, but they're the same. They can, since because they're basically the same as bridges, the only reason to use these is for more aesthetics. In fact, I've seen a lot of people use them just for the columns alone. But function-wise, they're the same as bridges. Next is the note and music block. These are essentially the same. They can both be modified, and they're both bouncy. The only difference is that the note block doesn't play a music note in the same way that music blocks do. And when we talk about levels in a future class, if you guys so choose to continue, music blocks are important for music levels. But in essence, for both of these, when you bounce on them, and you jump at the same time you bounce, you can jump much higher and further than you normally can. The timing can be tricky, as there have been a lot of lost lives because the timing is so difficult to get. So that's something you guys will definitely want to practice for the test. Just getting that, not only putting them in good levels, but getting that timing down. Creative ways to use them. A, a lot. Similar to ice blocking, usually for increased challenge. Maybe make a bridge where you have to jump on each one, or create a tower where you have to jump. There are numerous ways. Note blocks are very popular in Mario Maker too. Next is the very popular pipe. These have numerous applications. It's worth mentioning first that there are 4 types: blue, green, yellow, and red. And they're not just colors, each one represents a speed at which things come out of. Blue being the slowest, all the way down to red being the quickest. And I want you to write these down. Blue, from slowest to quickest, it goes blue, green, yellow, red. Got it? Good. Now, there are numerous applications. The first big one is if you enter one, you can go into a subworld. And that basically is a second level within your level. We will talk more about the sub-level in a future class, but that's basically what the main use of pipe is. Another use is to have an item or enemy come out of. And again, at the rate at which each come out of is dependent on the color. Now, there are so many applications that we could be doing this class for a while, just talking about these applications, and which you guys do in the final class, 401. But basically, if you're looking, for instance, if you want a rapid fire machine gun of enemies, use the red. You put a Koopa troop of Goombas inside a red pipe, and they come out at lightning speeds. So again, there are numerous applications and a very popular item, pipes. They appear in all 5 modes. Next is a rotating block. Now this item is unique to Super Mario World. Instead of the brick blocks that you normally get, here you get a rotating block. Now what does that mean? Well, instead of breaking, generally when you're small and you hit a brick, it does nothing. Instead, here in Super Mario World, if you hit a rotating block, it spins and and you can go through it until it closes again. Now with that application comes a lot of shenanigans. And yes, believe it or not, that is a technical term. You're going to want to know shenanigans. But in essence, one thing is in troll levels. Again, we'll go through that in a future class. Where you hit it, then you go up into it, and then it stops spinning, and now you're stuck. Now, the way to break rotating blocks is in Super Mario World, is if you're big, you spin, and you can break it from you above it. There are numerous applications. It can also be modified. Generally, if you're worried about breaking, you would use hard blocks instead of rotating blocks in Mario World, but if you want them to be able to be broken, maybe for a secret, you use rotating blocks. Next is the SemiSolid Platform. Now this one is, again, functionally the same as the bridge or the mushroom platform, but here it's a little different. First off, they look different from each game mode, but they function the same. Not only do they look different from each mode, they look different from each type of world. They are honestly more commonly used as decoration than they are as platforms. As you will see, numerous levels have them in the background to give a level more flair. Generally, levels become popular if they look good as well as play good. So you definitely want to know how to use these effectively, SemiSolid platforms, as each mode will have numerous types. So make sure you stay on those. And the last terrain we will go through in this unit is the spike block. These only appear in Super Mario 3D World as spike blocks. Basically what these are is we're talking about the on-off switch version in a future unit. The one I'm talking about is the yellow block. The yellow block will come on and off periodically, like every second or so. And when it's on, the spikes appear. If you touch it, it acts just like a spike trap. If it's off, it acts just like a platform. These can be very tricky and are very good for some difficult platforming levels. So make sure you use these wisely. They're really good if you don't want an on-off switch as well. You want things to be timed, because in most other worlds, which we will talk in much more detail in a future class, you would put a Koopa or some kind of shell that goes back and forth and hits an on-off switch to cause things to come on and off like platforms. However, in Super Mario 3D World, these spike blocks can can help you in preventing from wasting time doing that. While they aren't used that often, they can and have been used in very good ways. But make sure you write it down anyway, as it may appear in test. Well, I believe that's all the time. Yeah, I believe that's all the time we have for today. Thank you all for coming. This was Unit 1 of the Mario Maker Construction 101. So, thank you for coming. Good job. We will have a quiz maybe the next time and tomorrow. And if you have any questions, you know to find me. So, thank you all for coming. Goodbye, and God bless. Hey guys, thank you very much for watching this video. If you like my videos, please subscribe to the channel to be notified when I post, and click that notification bell to actually notify when I post, as YouTube does not do a good job notifying the subscribers. If you have any suggestions for future role plays, maybe if you either have an idea on what I should do next, or if there's a certain type of video you want me to make another of, please leave a comment down below or email me. My email address will be in the description below. If you want to see updates to my uploads, as well as my cultural hot takes, please follow me on Twitter. My link is in the description below. And until next video, thank you very much for watching, and God bless.